Hi everyone, and welcome to my kitchen. It is Tuesday and you are cooking with Evey. I'm hoping that this is running. This was my second take today. For some reason my video doesn't seem to like to work all the time, but we're here now. And today we are going to be making a Paleo Pear Tart. I've gotten off my pumpkin phase. You probably have had enough of pumpkin coming up on Thanksgiving. So pumpkin is always good, but pears are also in season now. And I had a bunch of pears here that are some really ripe. And I thought, oh, this is a great, but as pears get riper, they get sweeter and sweeter, and they're perfect for this tart. So let's get started, shall we? So what's nice about this tart, oh, before I get started though, if you'd like the recipe, you can download it from my website. Just go to my website, eveyschweig.com, go to the recipe tab, look under the holiday recipes, and you'll find this Paleo Pear Tart. All right, and that's what I'll be working from today. And in addition, if you're looking for additional wonderful recipes, easy to make, easy to have along, I have a cooking to relieve stress for the holidays, something that all of us could do a little bit without over the holidays, more stress, right? So check that one out as well. But in the meantime, let's make this delicious dessert. I find I've made it for Thanksgiving, I made it for Christmas. It's wonderful. And I like it because it is grain-free and dairy-free. It does have an egg in it, so it's not totally vegan, but you could make a vegan tart crust to go with this as well. So to start off, we're going to start working with some almond meal. I have some almond meal that I just pulsed in my food processor until it was a coarse, like a fine coarse, if that makes sense. So there's not any big chunks in it, but it's not fine like almond flour. I'm going to add a little bit of almond flour to this as well. In addition, I am going to use a little baking soda and some salt and an egg, as I mentioned, to bind everything together. A little bit of sweetness with honey, some vanilla, and coconut oil. So let's get started. Very easy. Let's just measure out our ingredients. I'm going to use a cup and a half of my almond meal. All right. And I'm just going to, I'm going to overdo it a little bit here. So I should know better than to do that, shouldn't I? Here we go. I can pour that excess back in. So I have my 1 cup here. You just love it when that happens. When you're recording, no less. And then I have a half cup. So I don't want to repeat that problem, but let's see how we do. Sometimes the almond meal gets a little sticky and it's makes it difficult coming out. All right, so I have my cup and a half now of my almond meal in, and I'm going to add now a half cup of my almond flour. So and I like to have these nice and leveled off. But, you know, for this recipe, it really doesn't need to be that exact. Next, I'm going to add in a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. And what I like to do is mix all my dry ingredients first in a typical baking way, right? So that we can mix all the dry ingredients, mix the wet ingredients, and then mix them together. And I'm going to add in 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, just to give it a little bit of flavor. All right. Then, in a separate bowl, I'm just going to set this aside. Let me just give this a little bit of a mix. Looking for my whisk here. Here we go. Oh, by the way, I'm wearing my new apron for my birthday. So, first time wearing this. But I did just notice the sleeve tends to fall down, so we'll have to see how that goes. All right, so I just very loosely combined all of those ingredients in there. I'm going to set that aside for a moment. And in a small bowl, I just have a little cereal bowl here. I'm going to add my egg, 1 large egg. By the way, I did preheat my oven to 350 degrees, so that is now heating up. Let me just finish with this crust, and then we'll prep the pan. I probably should have prepped the pan beforehand, but no harm. All right, so I have my egg in here now. To this, I am going to add a tablespoon of honey, and I'm very lucky to have some local honey here. Our village, our town, actually has their own honeybees. So I've been enjoying honey from local honeybees. They say that's very good for allergies because the bees are feeding on the local pollens. So I have 1 tablespoon now of my honey. I'm just gonna clean that out a little bit. There we go. Always with clean hands, right? And I'm going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of my vanilla extract here. There we go, 1/2 teaspoon. All right. And then before we started, I just heated up some coconut oil. I actually just did it in the microwave. You can do it over the stove if you'd like. But I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons, or I'm sorry, 1.5 tablespoons. So 1.5 tablespoons of coconut oil. Again, it's not that exact, but I do happen to have a 1/2 tablespoon is 1 teaspoon. I'm sorry, and 1/2, right? 1.5 teaspoons. So I will do that. There we go. And then I'm going to whisk those all together. Grab that whisk and just lightly beat the egg and mix it in. And then what I'm going to do is add, as I said, my wet ingredients into my dry to make our batter for our tart shell. All right, let me grab a spatula to do that and move some of these things out of the way so that you can see what I am doing here. All right, so I now have my wet ingredients, which consisted of my egg, my coconut oil, my vanilla. I'm going to add that, and my honey, and I'm going to add that into my dry ingredients. And then mix them until they're all incorporated. And you can use your hands to do this as well. Sometimes when I get to the end, I will give a little bit of a mix with my hand. But just so you can see, actually this mixed up very, look, there goes that apron. Uh-oh. All right. Let me just show you what the batter looks like at this point and the consistency of it. It mixes together very easily. Now, what I want to do is prepare my tray. So I have, I believe this is like a 9 by 9 inch tray. And I have a piece of parchment paper here. You can see it's a little bit bigger than my tray. What I'm doing is I'm just going to fold my paper so that one edge fits nicely into my tray. A little bit more. There we go. Let me show that to you. Can you see how that there's the edges here still come up, but these edges are nice and close to the shape of the tray. I do that because when I want to take my tart out, I can then lift these sides up. And, you know, I'll use a knife along the sides and lift it up and take it out to cut. It makes it so much easier. So I'm going to add I don't need to grease my parchment. There's enough oil that's in the batter here that I don't need to do that. You can roll this batter out if you'd like. I find that I can just use my fingers to spread things out. I'll use a little bit of water on my hands if it gets sticky. But then I have a little trick that I'm going to show you that makes it so much easier. This is going to be a fairly thin crust. So I want to push it out as much as I can to the edges. And I'll show this to you in just a second, a little bit up close, so that you can see what I'm doing. But the parchment makes the batter slide very easily along the bottom of the tray. And you're going to see it looks a little messy at this point. That's okay, because we're going to do something that will even everything out. All right. So let me show you what it looks like now just with me pushing it with my fingers. Okay, you can see it's a little bit lumpy and whatnot. So I have another pan that's just a little bit smaller than this pan. You can then take another piece of parchment paper, or you can use a piece of wax paper. I figured I'd use a wax paper here so you can see with how the two different papers work. And I'm just laying this paper in over the batter. Then I'm going to take my smaller pan, put it inside on top of the paper, and I'm just going to push down. And I'm going to make sure that I'm pushing along the edges. Essentially just flattening everything out. Sometimes I have, you know, more of a crust along the edges than other times. Let's see how we did this time. What I want to do is I just want to have maybe a 1/4 of an inch of a lip that goes around the outsides of the crust. And I can go along with my finger to help that along in the process. But now you can see the difference. Look how smooth that is. All right? You can see my crust isn't exactly perfect. So what I might do is go around, I'll wet my finger again, and just kind of nudge and smooth out those edges a bit. Sometimes if I get a lot in one area, I can take a knife and just cut off the excess in one area and place it in another. So as you can see, I've taken it off of this one corner. I'm going to put it in the corner here because it looks like there isn't that much there. But it's a pretty forgiving process, and it doesn't need to be perfect, which is what's so great about this recipe. And most of the recipes that I do, they're not perfect. I'm always changing things and you know, trying new things. Sometimes I never do the same thing twice. But having said that, I did make my pumpkin mousse last week, and I don't know if you noticed, but I did change the recipe. So if you watched the video last week, check out the recipe in the recipe tab in my website, because I did change the amounts of spice that I added. I actually cut back on it because I just found it to be a little bit too strong. Okay, so now we have a beautiful crust. I am going to put this into the oven for 10 minutes at 350 degrees. Let me go do that. And I'll set myself a timer for 10 minutes. Hey Siri, set a timer for 10 minutes. Make sure she did that. She did. Very good. All right, so that's a very quick way. You can do that with almost any batter. Just my sleeves here. You can do that with almost any batter, and it will work out nicely. So we have our crust baking. Awesome. Let's now look at our filling and what we're going to do for that. What I need to do is get another bowl. To mix up a glaze that's going to go over the pears. I've got my bowl here. What I need for that is, let me grab the ingredients. Where did I put? Here we go. I put them over here. So for the glaze, I will need a little bit of lemon juice, some arrowroot starch. Now, I like to use arrowroot. I don't do corn, but I'm wondering whether cornstarch would work as well, because, or tapioca would probably work as well, tapioca starch. So, but I have arrowroot, so I will use that. That is a very common paleo ingredient. Arrowroot, I have some maple syrup that I'm going to be adding in, as well as a little bit of flavor with cinnamon. And that's it for the glaze, all right? Make sure I have everything there. Good. So, I'm going to do about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, which I know will be about 1/2 of a lemon. So I'm not even going to measure it out. I'm just going to squeeze that directly into my bowl here. I just know from experience that more or less I get about 2 tablespoons. And to that, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. Yum. And this also was a local purveyor of maple syrup. I always like to get local if I can. Support our local businesses. All right. So I have my 2 tablespoons of maple syrup now. And to that, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of arrowroot. The arrowroot, in this case, or if you were using tapioca starch, is used as a thickener. It's a clear thickener. Unlike flour, you know, if you use that for a sauce, gravy, something we'll be doing. Having a lot of gravy there for Thanksgiving, I'm sure, a lot of you, right? And I'm going to add in a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, just for a little bit of flavor. And then I'm just going to whisk that up. Now there's 2 things that you can do with this glaze. You can either, just gonna mix it up here. You can either reserve the glaze till after you put the pears into the tart, into the crust, and then just pour it over. Or you can slice up your pears, put them in a bowl, and mix it all together and put the glaze on it. I've done it both ways. It works well both ways. Today, I'm not quite sure what we're going to do, but, well, I kind of do, but I'll tell you in a minute. So, I'm going to set my glaze now to the side because I need to prep my pears. So, I had a few pears here. I have some that are very ripe, delicious for this, but I'm going to use this one that's not quite as ripe, just because it will slice up easier while I'm showing you this. I do like to use the riper pears. They also look a little sad because they do get bruised and whatnot, but I'm telling you, the flavor on them is fabulous. And by the time you're done with the tart, you don't really see the skin or any of the bruises or anything like that. So, all right. What I like to do is slice the pear very thinly. First, though, I need to remove the core. So I like to use, if you have a little melon baller like this, you can use this. You can use a measuring spoon to kind of scoop out the seeds in the center. So when the pear isn't quite as ripe, it's a little bit more challenging. When they're ripe, they scoop out so easily. There you go. Now, one half of the pear will have the stem left in it. If the pear is very ripe, you can just pull that stem out, and a string will pull out. This string that's right down here will pull out with it. Since this is a little bit firmer, I'm just going to go in with my knife and cut that line out because it is a little bit stringy. There you go. All right, so you can see. So now I have 2 halves. I'm going to cut 3 of these pears. Oh, I just realized I have the tail end of this one in still too. So I'm going to carefully cut that out. And I just usually make just like a little wedge to take that out. You can see it's kind of buried in there. So we're gonna get rid of that one too. Now, you can cut these very thinly by hand using your knife, like so. Or, I used to do it that way until I got a mandolin. A mandolin makes the process quick and easy. The one thing you need to be careful about, though, is your fingers. And let's see if I can find my protective glove. Here we go. All right. So I have a protective glove that I like to use when I use the mandolin. Sometimes a mandolin will come with a little cover that you can put over the thing that you're slicing, the food that you're slicing. But I like using these because I get a better feel for what's going on. And I'm going to just bring it a little closer. How's that? So you can see what's going on here. All right? How's that? And I'm just going to take my pear and slice down. You can see how this could get a little tricky if your hand is not protected. Sometimes I'll use the palm of my hand. And you can see we're getting some nice, evenly cut slices. Probably about 1/8 of an inch, maybe even thinner, maybe 1/16 of an inch thick. In fact, I probably would like this a little bit thinner. So I just made it a little bit thinner for this other half. And I'm going to slice down here. All right. There we go. All right. So now we have our pear all sliced up and ready to go. Let me bring you back again. Oh, I can smell our tart crust cooking away there. All right. Oh, hi again. All right. So we now have our pear. Now, as I said, for this dish, usually you use about 3 pears. And I cut up a few ahead of time, knowing that timing would be a little bit tight. So I'm going to add, these pears are already in the glaze. I'm going to add in our pear that we just sliced up. And I'm going to mix them in. I'm just going to rinse off the spatula that I used for our batter. There we go. All right. I'm just going to coat my pears. So I did put the glaze in here. So this is how you do it if you're not just pouring it over. You're just going to mix the glaze in with your pears. Now, let's pretend that our tart already came out of the oven. I'm going to let it cool a few minutes. And there it is. It's ready to come out. Let me go grab that out of the oven and show you what we have. Oh, that looks fabulous. Here we go. So, here is the finished tart. It puffed up a little bit. I'm going to let this cool. And I'll make a different tart another day. The other thing too, what's nice about this tart is you can use apples, you can use berries, you can use peaches. I've made this with blueberries and it's fabulous. You can make it with a custard. So if you make an egg custard with it, fabulous. But, so I baked this one up earlier today. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring it closer again so you can see how to layer the pears and make a beautiful little pattern as you're doing this. So let's get you up here. All right, there you go. All right, so here we have our tray. I might just move to the side here so you can see. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pear pieces and lay them overlapping down along the length of the tart tray. All right, and this takes a little bit of time. And I'm sorry that this class is running a little bit longer than it usually does. What I try to do is layer them all in the same direction. So the fatter side is on one side and the thinner side is on the other. You don't have to do it that way. It's just a way that I've started doing it and it seems to work out well for me. And you don't always have to follow the rule either. Sometimes I just say, okay, what seems like the right thing to put here to fill in a spot, right? See, like for here, in this one here, I might just put this one here and cover up the gap there. But what happens then is you get this beautiful layering of pear. Let me get some of these riper pear pieces in here. Yeah. All right, now I'll show you a complete row once it's done. Here. So now you can see I've layered one row. Now I'm going to go in for a second row. I'm going to overlap that first row a little bit. And just do the same thing that I did for the first row. But you can see how I've overlapped here a little bit. All right. All righty. There we go. Okay. Oh, okay. So you can see the pattern there, right? All right. So you continue this way until you've done the entire tray. And I'll just finish this one more row to give you the idea. Then we're going to pop it into the oven again, and we're going to bake it for another 15 minutes at that 350 degrees. All right. And what I will do is I will post our finished tart when it is done. When I'm done layering here, what I will do is I'm just going to sprinkle it with a few pecans. If you had not put the glaze on your pears up until this point, you can pour the glaze right over the top and pop it in the oven. All right, here we go. You might find that you have some smaller pieces at the end. Those are great just to tuck in corners and use up as much as that pear as possible. I find I like to have a nice thick layer of those pears on top. And I almost have this entire tart done and ready. So maybe I'll just complete it so you get to see how it looks. If any of you have questions, by all means ask me. As I said, I've done this with peaches, whatever's in season. That's what's great about this. You can use just any kind of seasonal fruit. Plums are great in this. I haven't tried strawberries. I think strawberries might not have enough sweetness to them. But let me know if you try it. It's always fun to hear back and know what others are doing. I would love to hear if you use this for one of your holiday meals this year. I'm actually shortening some of these end pieces here because they are a little bit longer than what I need. You'll find as you get to the bottom, you're using up smaller pieces potentially to fill in. Ah, this is looking great. All right. Oops. You know, I bet you this would even taste good if you put some raisins, sprinkled some raisins on top at the end. All right, here we are. So we now have our tart all layered, looking good. Let me just push you back a little bit again. And we will just sprinkle a little bit of the pecans over the top. About 2 tablespoons. There we go. And there you have it, our finished tart. Isn't that great? All right, I'm going to pop it in the oven. I'll post the picture when we're done. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, by all means, contact me. Always happy to hear. Always happy to hear what you're doing with your foods, with your holiday foods. And hopefully you'll have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm not quite sure I'm going to be posting next week, but we'll see how things go. But it's great to see everybody out there, and I've got some extra pears here, which will go into that other tart that I made during the class here. But I'm going to pop this one in, and we'll take a look in a little bit. Have a great holiday if I don't see you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye for now.